So the next thing I want to jump into is a lot of people have asked about nutrition and where we stand on that. So I'm going to go briefly through some of the top inflammatory foods that I find have been helpful. Some of this may be repeat for you, some of this may be new. We know that on average, about 72% of what you put in your mouth is pro-inflammatory. Again, 72% on average, what the average American puts in their mouth is pro-inflammatory. What does that mean? Pro-inflammatory means it's turning on disease, accelerating aging, and oxidation. So let's talk about some of the big ones. Dairy. Why is dairy supposedly healthy for us? What have we been told? Calcium. What else? Vitamin D. Well, let's do this. Those are the two common ones we hear. So calcium and vitamin D. Which land mammal has some of the biggest bones? An elephant, right? How often do you hear of an elephant coming down with severe osteoporosis? Where does an elephant get its calcium from? Gets it from its plants, right? It goes back to that term genetic discordance. You wouldn't feed a lion a bale of hay, and you wouldn't give a horse a steak. But both lions and horses have bones, and they're eating completely different. So an elephant is eating in a line with its genetic makeup. So we know that dairy products, the calcium that's in dairy is not very bioavailable. And on top of that, which country has one of the highest consumptions of dairy and one of the highest rates of osteoporosis? A big us. So we know an elephant's diet is very alkaline. Now we won't get into that too much today versus acidic. The other one I heard was vitamin D. Where does vitamin D come from in milk? It's added. Have you ever noticed on a milk jug where it says fortified with? What does that mean? It means it's added. How healthy is a food substance if you have to add a vitamin to it before you can make a health claim? Because we could obviously put a vitamin in cardboard and call it healthy if we really wanted to. And like we said yesterday, have you ever thought about approaching a wild animal or milking it? Does this gal want to be milked? And as we mentioned, let's see if you remember. How much milk would you have to drink to get the same vitamin D as about 20 or 30 minutes in the sun? 10, you guys are good, 10 gallons. Raise your hand if you had dairy in the last month. Butter, milk, keep your hands high. Any form of dairy, butter, milk, yogurt, cheese, okay, good, perfect. Raise your hand if you had human breast milk in the last month. No, just raise your hand high. No, come on, raise your hands. Now, I say that to be clear, I'm not endorsing we all go drink human breast milk. But if you notice how the whole tone of the entire audience completely changed, and there was chuckles and there was laughter, and it kind of felt like we were back in, junior high or high school sex ed class, learning new words. So if you felt a little bit awkward or uncomfortable, or you giggled or thought, boy, Dr. Gala's kind of off his rocker, that's silly, consider that you raised your hand immediately when I asked if you'd consume the product that came from a breast of a different species, cow's milk. But when I asked if you've consumed the product that comes from your own species, everyone got a little weird. If you went to one of your friends and you said, here's a cup of cow's milk, and here's a cup of Jenny's milk, who's lactating right now, drink one, which cup do you think your friends would drink first? Isn't that a little weird? That we're more put off by drinking and eating a product that comes from our own species, designed for our own species, by our own species. We're more put off by that than we are by consuming a product that comes from a completely different species, breast. And we don't think twice about it. Now, again, I'm not endorsing we all go drink breast milk, but we know cow's milk has a lot of allergens in it. What is the allergen in milk? Lactose. Casein is one, and also whey is one potentially, but lactose. Raise your hand if you ever heard of lactose intolerance. So we know that dairy is one of the highest allergens. We also know that there's some research now to show that there's actually hormones in this product that aren't destroyed by cooking, heating, pasteurization, or digestion that can enter the bloodstream intact. Do you want cow hormones in your body? What is cow's milk meant for? Baby cows, right? Cow's milk, what is human breast milk meant for? Babies. The thing is cows have this figured out better than we do. How much dairy does a grown cow drink every day? How much dairy does a grown elephant drink every day? But we as humans, we consume it on a monthly basis. And yet we get grossed out when we think of consuming human breast milk. Even though they're low in the glycemic index and load, they're high in the insulin indice, meaning that if you want to lose weight, if you want to reduce your risk of acne, immune response, inflammation, you want to reduce or eliminate dairy from your diet as best as possible. Because dairy is meant to take a little baby cow and turn it into a really big cow. I'll let that one just settle in for a minute. So every time you drink or eat dairy, you're telling your body that you want to turn from a little cow into a little calf into a big cow. So we know that even though grains have a low glycemic index and low, they have an insulin indice similar to white bread. And there's some research that was done by one of Cordain's colleagues, Hoyt. This was done several years ago that showed that if you drink milk, your insulin response will be similar to white bread, meaning that your body, it strains your pancreas. So if you're diabetic, you want to lose weight, or you want to just be generally healthy, you should avoid the dairy products. There's a lot of other things about dairy that we know are unhealthy that we won't get into, but that's one of the big ones. The other one is grains. Why are grains supposedly healthy for us? What have we been told? So fiber, that's a big one. Because what we're supposedly told by the government to eat, 6 to 11 servings a day. So we're supposed to have we're supposed to have a loaf of bread every day, supposedly. Why are we told to have 11 pieces of bread every day for the rest of our lives? Because of fiber? What else? So B vitamins? Something to put the butter on. Something to put the margarine on. Finish this sentence. Peanut butter and there's certain and corn syrup. There's certain things that people do together, and yes, that is one of them, and that is not only a marketing, it's a devastating marketing tactic, but also it is it's far too true because it obviously is wreaking havoc on you. So I hear fiber, I hear protein, and I hear so you can put butter on it. What else? Why else are we told to eat 11 pieces of bread a day? I think I heard carbs. As a nation, do we need to lose weight or gain weight? Lose weight. So we know, why is it really healthy for us? So I've heard fiber and what's that? Fills you up. Do we need to be more filled or less filled as humans? Less filled. We know fiber on a per calorie basis, grains don't hold a candle to vegetables, so fiber's really out. The vitamins are in there. Have you ever noticed on a loaf of bread where it says enriched with, or on a box of crackers? What does that mean? It means it's added. So we've just dispelled that. So why are grains healthy for us? The question's still on the table. I haven't heard it answered yet. Because the government said so. And I believe that's probably one of the biggest reasons that why cradle to grave we consume these products without even questioning what they're really healthy for. I'm willing to bet that most of you in these last few days have spent more time focused on your health than you have in years. And I'm also willing to bet that you went to school for 8 hours a day for a large majority of your younger life, going through school, from kindergarten all the way through high school. Maybe even you went to college and beyond. And we put so much emphasis on learning how to write, how to read, how to do math, geometry, calculus, and things that you're probably never going to use. And then so we force our kids to go to school. Meaning, and I say force, and I mean that legitimately, because if you're not in school, the cops, if they see you, I remember I was passing through class one time because I was a teacher's aide and I was walking from one school to the next, and a cop stopped me and asked me what I was doing because it was during school hours. So if you skip school, we send armed guards after you. That's how important school is. We have such an emphasis on learning that if you skip school, we send people with guns after you to put you back. I mean, really, that's what's going on, right? We send the police after you. When you graduate, when do you really need education on health? When you're young and in your teenage years, or now? I'd say both. Where do you really need it? Do you need it now, or did you need it then? When will you appreciate it more, now or then? So both is the right answer, and you're right. And what I mean by that is, when you've graduated, we stop the education process. And we say, okay, now you have to go to your physician twice a year or once a year, and in 20 or 30 minutes, which how much of that is actually spent with the doctor, 5 or 10 minutes? We expect you to get the education to make dramatic health improvements. How many times has your doctor looked at your chart and said, yeah, you need to lose some weight. You need to start eating better. And that's where they leave you. What does that mean? And there's a reason why we're getting sicker rather than healthier listening to mainstream advice. Because we've taken, instead of 8 hours a day, and essentially holding you by gunpoint to learn, we've distilled it down to 1 or 2 meetings a year with your physician, and we expect in that half an hour, which maybe 10 or 20 minutes is actually with the provider, to give you your education. So we've went from 8 hours for 9 months to 10, 20 minutes a year. How are you supposed to learn this? And the fact that you're here learning this is putting you head and shoulders above the rest of the population, because you didn't know this. And I think you're absolutely right, the gentleman that mentioned that because the government told us, because I think when we had the food subsidies starting, it changed our whole perception and it got politics into health. And we've been doing this from cradle to grave without even really understanding why. I'm willing to bet that you know more about math and maybe even algebra and geometry than you know about basic nutrition, the average person anyways. Not you, of course, because after several days of hearing this, you're a genius and expert. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of lectins, gluten, or gliadin. So we know that going gluten-free is just the tip of the iceberg. If you go gluten-free, I applaud you, but it's the tip of the iceberg. We also know there's other things called lectins, gliadins. Essentially, these are anti-nutrients to help resist digestion and can wreak havoc. Everything from headaches to cerebral ataxia, white and dark matter, where it can actually, in your brain, can actually start eroding, to headaches, migraines, leaky gut, acne. Well, not so much acne in terms of gluten and lectins, gliadins, but more of the other aspect of grains, the high glycemic load. We know grains also, number 2, increases tissue acidity. If you want to be healthy, do you want your body to be more acidic or less acidic? Less acidic. We also know grains are a poor source of fiber on a per calorie basis. They don't hold a candle to fruits and vegetables. We also know that they're a poor source of micronutrients, which is why in a box of crackers or cereal, bread, you see the term enriched. Because it wasn't healthy enough on its own, so we had to add a multivitamin to it. We know it's high in the glycemic index and load, so if you eat it, it's like eating a mouthful of sugar and it balloons you up. So you're basically, every time you eat grains, you're telling your body you want to gain weight. I'll just let that one sit for a little bit. Every time you eat grains, you're telling your body you want to gain weight. We know that it has a pro-inflammatory omega-6, omega-3 ratio. What are omega-3s and where are they found? So omega-3s can be found in fish oil, certain types of eggs. Omega-3s are healthy for everything. Raise your hand if you've heard that it's good for your brain, good for your heart. Good. Why is it good for all these things? Arthritis, Alzheimer's. Why is it good for all these things? Because, oh, good job, Sarah. Because we know omega-3s, especially when it's in the triglyceride form, reduces inflammation. So lowering inflammation is what can lower the aging process and reverse and reduce chronic disease. So lowering the inflammation in the inflammatory process. Omega-6s, so think of omega-3s as turning off inflammation. Omega-6s turn it on. Every time you eat grains, you're turning on inflammation. Omega-6s turn on inflammation. We know grains are indigestible in the raw form. Well, here, let's see who's honest here. Raise your hand if you've ever eaten corn and you noticed it the next morning. Why do you see corn the next morning? We don't have the genetic makeup and the genetic code to have the enzymes to break down cellulose and cell walls. So what we do is we grind it into a flour and we cook it into baked goods, cereals, breads, pastas, etc. And what we do now is we release the shell, and by doing that, we've released all these anti-nutrients. Seeds are meant to resist digestion. Raise your hand if you've ever accidentally bitten into an apple seed or a lemon seed or a watermelon seed and it kind of tasted bitter, so you spit it out. So when you see an apple seed or a watermelon or a lemon seed, do you spit it out or do you chew it typically? Most people spit it out because those seeds still have the chemicals in them to let our body know if we bite into it to say, whoops, and we spit it out. But what we've done with grains is we've bred out that bitterness and some of those other chemicals, but we haven't bred out the other nasty chemicals. So that warning sign is now gone because you're supposed to eat an apple and the seeds are supposed to go through you intact, get deposited with fertilizer and grow next year. So the apple seeds are, yeah, you got the visual on that, right? So the apple seeds are to go through you and resist digestion. They're not supposed to be ground into a flour like we've done with all these industrial products. We also know that grains promote weight gain, contain phytic acid, which can leach minerals from your bones and your body, meaning if you're osteoporotic or you have osteoporosis or you want to avoid osteoporosis, you want to avoid phytic acid, and it has wheat germ gluten. So you have to memorize this before the conference is over. Now, I don't put this up there to confuse you, rather to show you what I'm talking about. I don't make this up, but I'm going to show you, Rebecca, will you hit that light there? Thank you. What I mean by this is, if you're taking notes, feel free to write this down. The chemical PGE2. PGE2 is a very inflammatory chemical. PGE2 causes inflammation. Aspirin works right here. It's a COX inhibitor, which is why they say on the bottle you have to take it every so many hours. So if we're way down here, are we treating the symptom or treating the cause? We're treating the symptom. If this causes inflammation and we're treating right here, we're treating the symptom. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of prednisone, cortisone, steroid injections, right? So that works right here. So we're only halfway up this pathway. Now again, I'm just showing you this chemical pathway to understand what's going on with the pharmacology here. That we know that so we're only halfway. So do you want to know more than the average physician will ever understand in their career? And I say this not to be arrogant, but I teach physicians this. It's just not in their education. It's not their fault. It's just the way the system is put up. What I mean by that is go into your physician and ask them, say, okay, doc, if I have pain, my understanding is that I'm expressing PGE2, which is one of the most painful chemicals that we know of, which is why everyone has heard of aspirin. The whole world knows about aspirin because of that chemical. So first you can quiz your physician and say, doc, how does PGE2 work and where does it come from? Ask them, where in my diet does PGE2 come from? Why do you ask them that? Because PGE2 comes from one place and one place only, meaning your body cannot make it. It comes from what's called an essential fatty acid. What's an essential fatty acid? An essential fatty acid means your body can't make it. You have to get it from diet. True or false, your body can make vitamin C. Who thinks true? Who thinks false? Who didn't vote? Raise your hand if you ever heard of scurvy, the sailor's disease. So we know that our bodies have to get vitamin C from external sources. Same here. Let's go all the way. So here it is. You're going to learn more in the next 10 seconds than most physicians will ever learn in their lifetime. Let's get to the root cause. Where does this come from? Backwards, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. Linoleic acid, which is in grains, flours, corn, seeds, and seed oils. We should be getting a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-6s to omega-3s. Where do you think the average American is? 20-to-1 means we have 20 times more inflammation than we have reduced inflammation, which is why omega-3s are so powerful and why I recommend them as part of the core 4. Because reducing inflammation, because your body can only get this from diet. So ask your doctor, say, doc, so I know that PGE2 is a really high inflammatory marker and I'm having some aches and pains. Where does that come from in diet? And what foods should I reduce so I don't get that chemical in the first place? They say. And I'm willing to bet they probably won't really know. And it's not their fault. They just haven't been taught this. Because out of a 5,000-hour course, most physicians out of a 5,000-hour course have anywhere from about 1 to 20 hours in nutrition out of 5,000 hours. They're firefighters now. They're not contractors. They're just trying to put out fires. Our medical model today is you come in, it's quick, you're in and out, adjust a medication, review a lab real quick, next, on your way, lose some weight, eat better, and there you go. Well, what does that mean? So we know that we have two choices. You can either pursue health or pursue sickness. So how powerful, well, what I just showed you, how powerful is that? Meaning if you had one bowl of pro-inflammatory, raise your hand if you ever heard that Cheerios are supposedly good for you. So we've all been fed that, right? Literally. You see mothers giving their children cigarettes. I mean, Cheerios. Sorry, Sorry. Mothers don't give cigarettes, they give Cheerios, which of course is the same thing. So if you have one bowl of disease-causing, pro-inflammatory, death-causing Cheerios, how many salads would you need to balance out the pure death chemicals in one bowl of Cheerios? A lot of people say, well, Dr. Gala, I eat pretty healthy. And I'd say, well, if you eat pretty healthy, you probably wouldn't be in my clinic. And number two, you wouldn't have most chronic diseases, because we know you need about 20 salads to balance out one bowl of cereal. And that goes for, really across the board, it goes for oats, beans, quinoa, legumes, barley, etc., cereals, hot, cold, breads, etc. If you have 2 pieces of bacon, how many salads do you need? I know, I'm gonna break some hearts here. How many salads do you need if you have 2 pieces of bacon? Now, I don't know about you, but 2 pieces of bacon for me was just what I'd eat just going from the kitchen to the table. That was like the transit food. Any guesses? 30 salads. If you have 1 medium serving of fries, how many salads do you need to balance out the inflammation? 55 salads. That's not even supersized. If you have 1 serving of chips, how many salads do you need? We should, actually here, let's clarify. What's a serving of chips? A bag, right? Let's be honest. A true serving of chips is about what will fit in your hand, about 7 to 10 chips. So if you have 7 to 10 chips, how many salads do you need to balance out the pure inflammation? 75 salads, which means for every chip that you eat, let me back up, for every chip that you see someone else eat, you know that they need to eat 10 salads to balance out the inflammation in 1 chip. Which is why it's so easy to accelerate the aging process. But at the same time, now there are some things out there that are very healthy, and there are some other chips actually out there that are healthier. And the thing is, it's making healthier decisions. So before you raise your hand if you're feeling a little bit depressed right now. Okay. So don't worry, don't feel depressed. You can still live a normal life. Oh, what about eggs? If you have 2 regular store-bought eggs, how many salads do you need? If you have 2 regular store-bought eggs, you need 100 salads. Now, there's very healthy eggs called omega-3 eggs, so write that down, omega-3 eggs. Omega-3 eggs, you can find them in the grocery store. Those are gonna be healthier for you. So again, it's not that you're giving up eggs, it's that you're getting the right types of eggs. And to be clear, I need everybody to say no to this next question. Am I telling you you have to be or should be a vegetarian? No. Good. I just use a salad as one example because people always leave and say, Dr. Gala, it's too hard. I can never be a vegetarian. I say, I've never said that. I'm just using a salad as one example we can all agree on. There's lots of vegetables that are very healthy. There's lots of fruit that's very healthy. There's actually a few grains that we've identified that are healthy, as well as there's a lot of meats that are very healthy. Oh, people always say, what about soybean oil? If I have 1 tablespoon of soybean oil on your salad, how many salads do you need to counteract the pure inflammation and pure death in 1 tablespoon of soybean oil? People always ask me about alcohol. One guy told me one time, he said, yeah, but Dr. Gala, that's only a half a glass. And we know that even, we didn't touch on it too much, but for brevity's sake, I'll go through this. We know the sugar consumption has went up dramatically. And we know that that's a huge issue right now with kids. And we know that sugar can actually activate some of the same pathways and addictive pathways as cocaine and other drugs. And we know that that food addiction is just as bad as drug addiction. So when it comes to boosting metabolism and energy, we know that protein has 1 to 2 times the thermic effect as carbs and fats, meaning that after 2 weeks of burning high fat, low carb, your brain will switch and the body's energy and metabolism will switch to what's called beta oxidation. So if you go to 2 weeks, after about 2 weeks, if you switch to eating more protein and more healthy fats, you'll actually start burning fat faster. And we know that eating protein, just eating lean protein, boosts the weight loss effect, which is why I'm such a big fan. And I did a test with our protein powder because there's some protein powders that have the whey fraction I'm not a fan of. So I like to consider myself a human guinea pig. So this is what I did. I did this just about a week ago, is I bought a test kit And I took our paleo protein and I took a whole shake and I put even some fruit. I did it normally. So I put in some frozen berries and a tablespoon of almond butter and I put it in just with ice and water. Put it in a shake and I drank it as fast as I could, which, yeah, we're drinking a frozen shake as fast as you can. I realize isn't the smartest, but for the name of science, we'll do anything, right? And I realized I turned myself into a human pincushion. So I checked my blood sugar at the beginning and then every 15 minutes I checked my blood sugar. And this is what I found. My blood sugar stayed below 100 the entire time, meaning that it had no effect on it peaked up just a little bit and then it dropped down, but that's normal. Normal variance will be about anywhere from 80 to 100. So when I took it, normally, normal absorption, if we are gonna see a blood sugar response, we should see that within 15 to 30 minutes after consuming the food. So at the first dot was time 0, the second dot was 15 minutes, the third dot is 30 minutes, the fourth dot is an hour. So after an hour, really an hour is the full test, but we do 2 hours of testing to really see the peak because 2 hours after a meal, you should be back down to a fasting normal blood sugar level. Why is this important? Because we know for weight loss, you wanna keep your insulin down. For high energy, you wanna keep your insulin down. For burning fat, you wanna keep your blood sugar and insulin down, which is one of the reasons why I love this. Out of all the shakes that I've looked at, for not only improving energy, but also because it doesn't have a blood sugar effect. So a lot of people say, well, what can I eat? Well, very specific anti-inflammatory foods. As a general rule, to distill it down, now obviously even with this in mind, you can still get into trouble because there's lots of protein that people don't realize isn't actually healthy for them. There's actually vegetables that I wouldn't recommend. There's actually fruits that I wouldn't recommend depending on what's going on. This is a very, very blanket, very vanilla type approach that I'm suggesting here. How many people want to go swimming in that? Right. So maybe that's what your body looks like. Well, what's the difference between these two swimming pools? One's clean, one's dirty. What does it really come down to? The maintenance, but really it's the chemical balance, right? What does the pool person do when they go out there in the morning? They test the chemicals, right? So what we look at is which pool is going to be easier to maintain, the top or the bottom? The top. Which one is going to take more work, the top or the bottom? If you don't address that bottom pool now, what's going to happen to it in a couple months? Is it going to be easier or harder to clean? Harder to clean. Just like my mom, of course, my mom I would consider her that top type pool where it's much easier for my mom to maintain her health to where she looks and feels like that. So of course, and even just to an expression of how fast that can happen, if you reduce your inflammation, now here's the key. This gal, she dropped her inflammation 480%. Her foot pain and vision improved nearly 100%. Her A1C dropped from 6.9 to 5.7, and she was eliminated 100% of all of her insulin and oral diabetic medications. You can see how old she is just by the picture. You know, she's older. What I mean by that is imagine if you educate and instill this in your kids, in your grandkids, and you. Imagine if you're able to reverse this much damage in just a few months, imagine what you can do just even right now before you even get to that stage. Because I'm a big fan of making the rest of your years the best of your years. Thank you.